This episode is sponsored by Team Builder, yet another company that's doing great things for the first responder community. As a strength and conditioning coach myself who also trains tactical athletes, dissemination of wellness information is one of the biggest challenges. Now, Team Builder is the premier strength and conditioning software for tactical athletes, and there are several features that really impress me. Firstly, there is a full exercise library, so you, the personal trainer, does not have to create that within your own department. Secondly, you can send out programming, but also individualize, which I love. So you blanket program for everyone. Now you can tweak based on someone's injury, someone's need to maybe drop some body composition, rather than having to write a program for every single person on their own. Team Builder also allows you to build custom questionnaires to collate health and wellness data. It integrates with wearables. And I think one of the most important things is obviously it tracks. To me, it's imperative that we as a profession start tracking our people from day one and then over the full span of their career, therefore catching potential wellness issues and injuries before they happen. Now, if you want to try Team Builder, they are offering you, the audience of the Behind the Shield podcast, a free 14-day trial to experience all of the features. And if you want to take a deeper dive into Team Builder, listen to episode 1032 with Melissa Mercado, or go to teambuilder.com. And I'll spell that to you because it's not as you'd think, teambuildr.com. Welcome to the Behind the Shield podcast. As always, my name is James Gearing, and this week it is my absolute honor to welcome on the show Army Ranger, Delta veteran, author of Forged in Chaos, actor and director Tyler Gray. Now, in this conversation, we discuss a host of topics, from his journey into the military, his perspective on the industrial military complex, military recruiting, transition, mental health in our veterans, organizational betrayal, the future of AI in warfare, and so much more. Now, before we get to this incredible conversation, as I say every week, please just take a moment. Go to whichever app you listen to this on, subscribe to the show, leave feedback, and leave a rating. Every single 5-star rating truly does elevate this podcast, therefore making it easier for others to find. And this is a free library of well over 1,200 episodes now. So all I ask in return is that you help share these incredible men and women's stories so I can get them to every single person on planet Earth who needs to hear them. So with that being said, I introduce to you Tyler Gray. Enjoy. Well, Tyler, I want to start by saying two things. Firstly, thank you to our mutual friend Ryan Parrott for making this introduction. And secondly, I want to welcome you onto the Behind the Shield podcast today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So where on planet Earth are we finding you this morning?
Las Vegas, Nevada.
Beautiful. Well, I would love to start at the very beginning of your story. I know there's a huge amount to discuss, so we'll just dive straight into that. So tell me where you were born and tell me a little bit about your family dynamic, what your parents did, how many siblings.
I was born in Bakersfield, California, which is well, it's changed obviously now, but when I was, growing up there, it was a relatively small, farming town in really on the edge of Southern and Central California. It's really where Central turns into Southern. It's the border town between the two. And my dad was a heavy equipment mechanic. He worked on what's called So Bakersfield's known for oil farming and oil. That's the two things. And so heavy equipment, big, any kind of tractors, Caterpillar, John Deere, things like that. My mother, to be honest, I don't really remember. I couldn't really tell you what job. I mean, she had a lot of jobs. She worked at Kmart. She had a I think she was like a secretary, just random jobs, basically. Um, and for me, I couldn't wait. I couldn't get out of Bakersfield fast enough. I hated it even as a kid. So some people are just born into environments that they don't feel like they belong, and I felt that way where I grew up.
I can relate. I'm English. I'm sitting here in America, so there's an element of that in my story too. I love where I'm from, but it was a time to transition out when I became an adult. What about sports and exercise? What were you playing and doing during the school ages?
Mainly soccer. I played everything, for fun, but far as actually competitively, soccer was the main thing I played. I played football for 2 years in high school, but I loved football, like, you know, not playing it in high school, but I just didn't like, I don't know, I didn't like the whole culture of high school football. Coaches who obviously were trying to relive their glory days. It was just I don't know, I wasn't into it. So I played for 2 years and then I was like, I'm done. I also, by the way, was pretty aware as a freshman in high school. I remember doing hitting drills and them basically wanting to ram people with their helmet. And I remember going, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't know, but I'm not going to do that. I think that's probably and that was kids were getting concussions and all that, and it was. If you got a concussion back, this is mid '90s. If you got a concussion back then, that was considered, yeah, that kid's a good player. And now looking back, and it's like, dude, well, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that looking back, we have these kids basically getting, TBI and possibly CTE from playing high school football. It's wild.
I've had this conversation with many people on here, mainly people that were, high-level athletes and or coaches. And as someone that doesn't come from the US and you move here, I kept getting what I call the Uncle Rico story. I'd meet these men. They were deconditioned by this point. They were heavier. They were inside either side of 30. And it was the same story. I would have been in this league had it not been for my ACL, my labrum insert thing here. And I started asking myself, what are we doing to children in this country? Because there are countries all over the world that play at a super high level, that are world champions, that don't destroy their kids when they're in school. And it's that kind of fine line between, of course, you want your school to win, but are you sacrificing a child's longevity for the performance in that one academic year?
Yeah. And it's high school football. Who cares? It means nothing. So yeah, I was not about it. I liked soccer more as a sport. I played goalkeeper. And I really enjoyed that. I played it in, I think I played it only my first year of high school. I don't think I played my second year, but I also stopped going to school pretty much my sophomore year of high school. And literally ditched school pretty much, continuously daily after, I got a, for my birthday one year, I asked for my own phone line. And so I got it. And then I went to the system, this is going to sound like a story. I swear to God, it's not. My school, my high school, when I went there, was brand new, and they wanted to be all this is 90 or 92 ish, and they wanted to be tech savvy. So they got all these computers, and they started doing things with computers, which was new at the time. And I literally hacked I literally hacked my school's computer. And it was just simple password. I just figured out the password was dumb. And I changed the number in the system to my number for ditching school. I changed the number to my number in my room. So when they called and hey, your child missed school, and it wasn't common, everyone had one hard line generally. So it rang my machine and not my parents. So they never knew. So. Yeah, I'm pretty proud of that.
When I think back, I graduated school, and we graduated at 16 in England, but I graduated in 90, so around the same time. And I think the last year I was there was the first time they had computers in the school. So I could imagine if you were ahead of the curve, you were probably able to do some pretty amazing things back then.
Yeah, I mean, it was so basic, but I remember very clearly like getting on it, and I don't remember the details of how I did it, but it was something like the password for admin was like admin, or something stupid.
Password.
And Yeah, it was really really simple, and they were trying to be ahead, and oh, put everything on computers, and I mean, to be fair, it was kind of ahead for its time, but yeah, looking back now, it was I didn't I'm glad that I ditched the school that I ditched, because we went and had fun. We'd drive to Pismo Beach, and go rent surfboards, and you know I look back now, I don't feel like I missed anything in class, that's for sure.
Well, we're going to get to your mental health story. As I start listening to all these people from literally all walks of life, especially when we wear uniform, the prevalence of childhood trauma in men and women that toe the line in the military and the first responders is like astonishing. And then supposedly on the ACEs, the Adverse Childhood Experience score, we on average have a 6 out of 10. When you reflect back now, were there elements of your early life that you think then ultimately contributed to the trauma you saw in uniform?
I think the opposite is true. I think the adverse, ADEs, adverse or ACEs, sorry, adverse childhood experiences, actually made stuff in combat less traumatizing. If you grew up in trauma, then trauma becomes your baseline. Like, so for me, growing up as a kid, I was bullied and picked on pretty continuously, and beat up. And so for me, I was a very sensitive kid. So I just shut off emotions when I was, I don't know, I'd have to figure out the age, but very young. I just actually was probably around, it was when I started to enter high school, or at least I created this fake character, is what I did around probably 13, 14 ish. And I was this very feeling sensitive, nerdy kid. That obviously wasn't working for me. So I basically turned into kind of this. Puberty also probably hit around the same time. There was multiple things going on. And I just turned into kind of this kind of arrogant, maybe arrogance a little strong, but just more of an unfeeling, you know, I don't give a shit attitude. And therefore I shut off emotion, because, I was getting hurt too much. And so, mentally, not, or emotionally, sorry. And so when you shut off emotion as a kid, when you get overseas and you see, whatever, blown up bodies, or, blown up body of a kid, or, whatever, bad stuff. If you've shut off emotions when you were young, there's no emotion there to react to. So personally, I think the ACEs are what make good warriors, because it sets up, same thing with law enforcement, first responders. It's exactly the same thing. It sets up the ability to do the job. I don't think it increases the trauma. I think it reduces it. And that's kind of one of my main theories, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Well, it's interesting because I think that I agree with you 100%, but there's one little additional piece I would put in. There's no question that the right kind of person that toes the line for military first responder has been through some shit. And my goal is one day that becomes literally part of the speech on day one. The fact that you're even here, you've probably been through some shit, because who's going to put their hand up and say, I want to go towards gunfire or a burning building or whatever? So it's an absolute asset. But if you bury that shit down and lock it in a little box, as the Mexican proverb says, they tried to bury us, they didn't know we were seeds. One day this will come out again. But if addressed, if worked through, I 1,000% agree, that becomes an asset. You become a more resilient person. So I think that's a really, really important part of this conversation, is that trauma does not need to define you as a negative unless it's pushed down. And I think when it's pushed down and then everything else mounts on top, that is the difference between someone who copes well on the mental health side and someone who survives combat and then sticks a gun in their mouth a year later.
Excuse me. Yeah. So I believe very strongly that the military, the government, military, whatever, they know exactly what's going on. They know. And anyone who doubts that, at least in the US, look at Marine Corps specifically. Look at the specific words, the specific ads, the specific campaign promises, for lack of a better term, that the Marine Corps is using for recruiting. There was one, be a man among men, right? Loyalty, courage, honor. It's basically saying, hey, did you grow up without a father? Awesome. We'll be your dad. Like, let's just call it what it is. That's what it is. That machine is looking for men that didn't really grow up with a masculine influence. There's no more masculine rite of passage in the world like there used to be, or definitely in the United States, right? It's gone. The masculine rite of passage is gone. So the military goes, it still exists here. Come give us what we want and we'll give you what you want. And the problem with, they can never be honest. And the reason they can't be honest is because you have to suppress emotion to do the job. Law enforcement, if you start letting in that emotion, you're done. And I never was a law enforcement officer. I'm just saying, I've talked to a lot and worked with them, but I'm saying same thing with the military. When I was doing my job, if I didn't think I was invincible in my head, I couldn't have done the job I did. If I would have allowed emotion, if seeing those things would have affected me, I couldn't continue to do it. So the contradiction or the dichotomy we're put in is that we're forced to suppress it while it's happening to continue to do it. Then when we're done, they don't pull us back out of that and reacclimate us to regular society. They just go, thanks for the service, have a good one, and kick you out on the street. And to me, it's criminal at this point. It's criminal.
What's interesting is the only thing that you guys have to lean into at all is the VA, and obviously some of the amazing nonprofits that have been founded by your communities. But I'm sure you've heard, law enforcement, my profession, fire. When that door closes behind us, that's it. There isn't even a VA. Like, thank you for your service and good luck with that mental and physical trauma. So it's a complete disservice. And I had Pat, oh my goodness, Delta operator Pat McNamara. He once said the term disposable heroes was the term he used. And I'm like, that's perfect. None of us think of ourselves as heroes, but that's, like you said, that's the picture that they're painting when you put the uniform on. But then the moment you turn your back, it's
a good phrase. Good phrase. And the hero phrase, here's what I say about it. Like, I know some legit heroes, like legit, and not one of them. Every single one of them would be pissed off for me calling them that, but I'm telling you right now, definitively they are, no question. So I just kind of now accept, it's hero's a relative term too. You know what I mean? It's a relative term. You can be a hero to someone, everyone's heroes are different. My heroes are different than someone else's heroes. So anyone can be a hero to someone depending on what they are looking up to in their life. Right. So, the other thing that I'll say, which is it drives me crazy, and few things probably piss me off more than what I'm about to say. And that is the military, the government, whatever you want to call it, the VA goes, oh man, that guy freaking, didn't reach out to anyone and he killed himself. Oh, it's a tragedy. And I go, hold on. From day one in, basic training or whatever, we are taught to constantly and always give to the team, give, and never take away, never ask for help, always give, always contribute, always shoulder more of the weight, and never, put your teammate in a position where they have to compensate for your lack of effort or pulling your own weight. That is what we are taught our entire career. Oh, and by the way, if it does happen, if you do need help and your teammates have to help you, well, guess what? You're a piece of shit. That message is ingrained on us for years, however long you were in. And then one day you get out, they go, have a good one. And then one day a guy doesn't ask for help. And then suddenly everyone calls him. He says he's fine. And then he takes his own life. And again, that system goes, oh my God, how did it happen? We never saw this coming. It's a tragedy. No, fuck you. You created that. That's your system. You created the system that made that happen. You are the one that taught us to not ask for help. So you cannot be surprised when a guy doesn't, or a girl for that matter, doesn't ask for help when they get out and takes their own life. No. That's unacceptable to me. That is a natural side effect of the system that you created and that you do not in any way change or modify as we start to transition out. There is no transition period. There is no switching of their mentality. What should happen is, and I'm making up times, 6 months again, I'm just making up numbers here, but it's like, okay, hey, you know that whole thing we taught you about, never take away from the team? Okay, when you're out, things are different. And here's what's different. And now we're going to walk that back and start teaching you to ask for help. And again, I don't know exactly what that system is, but there needs to be one. And it needs to be the other mistake that I see, at least in the military, making, and I don't know if it's the same in first responders, but people keep using the term reintegration. That's incorrect as far as I'm concerned. And the reason is we're not reintegrating back into civilian world. And the reason we're not reintegrating is if you join the military at 18, you've never been in regular society. Being, 0 to 18, you're in school, you're taken care of by your parents. You've never been in regular society. And then if you go into the military is just an extension of that. They take care of you. You got to ask permission to piss, right? So that goes on, let's say for 20 years. And then you get out at, after 20 years of service, and now they're like, oh yeah, we got to reintegrate. No. You need to integrate because you've never been a part of regular society. And therefore you have no baseline, no fundamental understanding because you're not going back to something. You're going to something that you fundamentally have never been a part of nor understood.
It's interesting how you talk about, putting the weight of everyone on the operator's shoulders or the firefighter's shoulders, the police officer's shoulders. A lot of us came in, this generation now came in post 9/11. And we watched the 343 firefighters killed, and a lot of us were driven into uniform then, and it was amazing. What a beautiful calling. But certainly this last 10 years, and I'm sure you've heard the same from law enforcement, we just watched this profession spiral, and not the people in it, but the management. And in my profession specifically, we're in a massive recruitment and retention crisis. And what that has created is vacancies in all these departments. That same guilt and shame is poured onto the first responders. Well, if you don't stay and work another shift, then obviously you're not one of the brothers. What that translates to is that little boy or little girl that you promised that you were going to be at their game, their recital, their concert, their, donuts for dad's event at the school. You just had to call them and say, through no fault of my own, I had to stay for another 24 hours. So that same tactic has been used in the fire service. And luckily, people are finally starting to understand it now. But you should be lucky to have a job mentality that we had, because we were, when I was testing, literally competing against hundreds, if not thousands of people for one position. Mm-hmm. That's not the case anymore because we've seen behind the curtain, we've seen what's killing us. And now people are finally saying we've got to stand shoulder to shoulder and push back on this. Otherwise, they will keep putting stuff on your shoulders until you are literally beneath ground.
100%. And here's another interesting part of that, another side effect of what you just said is, okay, hey, little Johnny, I gotta take another 24. Little Johnny's like, Dad's not coming to my soccer game. Guess what that's creating? the same fucking shit that pushed you into the service is now going to push him because he grew up without a father as well. And it's a generational cycle that's being perpetuated. And they know, man. They know. The people in charge, they know. They know. They know exactly what's going on. We are, one of my, it's such a great song. Such a great song. I mean, I grew up in just the 90s 80s, but the 90s the music was just amazing. And Civil War by Guns N' Roses is just such a great song about the military, or not about the military, but about war in general, and really the military industrial complex. But I think it's selling soldiers in a human grocery store. I always remember that line because it's so true. That's literally how we're treated. And on SEAL Team, on the show, my favorite episode, I think it was 218. I don't know. We did a lot of episodes. I think it was 218. My favorite episode, directed by Ruben. And the episode is so in, I don't know how much you know, but for the audience either way. So you have in an episode of television, you have what's called the A story, which is like the main story, and then you have the B story, which is like the sub story, right? The A story, what the team was doing, what the main team was doing in that episode was we were going to recover the bodies of a dead special forces team. I want to say in Africa. We went to a lot of countries. Again, I don't remember. But I think we were going to recover the bodies of a dead special forces team that was ambushed in Africa and killed. So they are sending, a SEAL team there, all these military assets, helicopters, blah, 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 all this stuff, doing all this effort to go get these dead bodies and bring them home. That's the A story. The B story was the Clay Spencer, Max Ferrot's character, is got this guy who actually looks very similar to you. And he is a veteran. He's gotten out and he's trying to get help for TBI at the VA. And it's documenting this guy going to the VA and he's like, hey, my brain is having problems. Like I'm not doing okay. And he's really trying to tell people, and they don't give him the help. And Spencer tries to help him and all this different stuff. And he ends up at the end of the episode, spoiler, incoming spoiler, he ends up taking his own life. And this is based on a true story, by the way. And not only does he take his own life, but he shoots himself in the chest in front of the VA so that his brain can be studied. And again, this happened. Actually, this has happened a couple times, I believe. And the whole point of that episode was the A story is look at how much the military will do to get the dead bodies of people that are still in. But look at what they're doing or not doing for the person that's now out. They're just completely abandoning him. Does that make sense?
No, it does.
We never said it in the episode, but I'll tell you my additional layer to that is this. We never talk about it in the episode, but why is the military going to such extreme lengths to go get those bodies? Have you ever thought about it?
No, please educate me.
To keep the disposable hero machine going.
It's basically bad press if you leave the bodies behind.
They want, hey, if you die, you're forever a hero. Look at what we'll do. It's not bad press. It's more like they're trying. It's a fucking recruitment tool, is what it is. We don't leave anyone behind. Even if you die, we'll come send a team to come get you. That's a recruitment tool, dude. They don't care. And the proof that we know they don't care is because look at what they do when you're alive and you're out. They don't give a shit. They are doing that specifically for the kids that aren't in yet, for them to see it and go, oh man, never leave a man behind. That's honorable. That's character. That's what I need in my life. It's a recruitment tool. We can act like it isn't, but it is.
When you talked about the way that particular individual took their own life, I had Jamie Metcalf, widow of David, SEAL Team 6, took his own life the same way. And then Sarah Wilkinson.
It's happened multiple times.
Yeah, and then you see it, in the NFL, and this is the thing. It's a cry for help that even posthumously they're still trying to make the world better through their own sacrifice. And you hear people
100%.
self-talk at the end. The way that their brain is just lying to them by that point, and their distortion of reality. But I mean, the signs are there, and this is the thing with my profession too. People throw up their hands in the air and go, "Oh, we just don't know what's going on." Like, we fucking do know what's going on. It's just you don't want to listen to the people who actually have the solutions, whether they're scientists or doctors, or whether in this case they're widows.
So I did a post, and you can look it up on my Instagram. Are you online right now? If you look up on my Instagram, you'll find a post. I did Chad Robichaud's The Resilient Show. The post has, I think 1,200 some odd comments on it. And it's got like 1,200 comments, and it was me talking about something I call LTSD. It's really what we were talking about ACEs and how they affect, us and everything. And my theory, which is I don't think PTSD is the problem in the veteran community. I don't think PTSD is the problem in the first responder community. Not only do I not think it, I can prove it's wrong. And I can prove it's wrong from within its own criteria. And so I do this explanation on this clip, and there's 1,200 comments. I would say 700 of them are like, "Dude, I've never heard it explained this way. This matches my life. Thank you so much." Blah, blah, blah. The other comments, maybe even more, are mental health professionals generally going, "You do not work. You do not have a degree. You do not work in the field. Stop talking. You don't know what you're talking about." I respond to every single one of them. And I go, "Really? Tell me where I'm wrong. Explain it to me. Talk to me." They don't answer back because they don't want to have a conversation. What they want to do is make people stop listening to the truth. Because PTSD exists for one reason and one reason only, and that is to push pharmaceutical drugs. I don't give a fuck what anyone says. That's a fact. So here's another fact about PTSD. PTSD is not specific to the military, first responders, combat. It's not specific at all. Anyone can have PTSD for damn near anything traumatic, which is a pretty damn broad definition nowadays of what's traumatic, right? So if anyone can have PTSD for damn near anything, well, then that cannot be our veterans' specific problem, because it's not. And I'll give you another example, and I'm going to extend this to first responders. Would you agree? And if you're a first responder or a current military veteran, whatever, would you agree that these four things are an issue in the veteran/first responder community when you get out, when you stop doing the job? Sorry, to be clear. Loss of identity, without
Absolutely.
question. Loss of purpose,
100%.
without question. Loss of community/brotherhood, whatever you want to call it.
Absolutely.
Without question. Loss of worth.
Yep, which are tied into the other three.
Without question, we know for a fact, it's not debatable, that those four things are huge issues in the veteran and first responder communities, right? And by the way, professional athlete community. It's the same thing. So here's those four things, and here's PTSD. These have nothing to do with this. Nothing. They don't go together in any way whatsoever. And so, since we know these four things are a fact, and they don't in any way go along with PTSD, why in the absolute hell are we focusing all our effort, energy, and money towards this one and ignoring the ones that we know for a fact are a problem? It's because it's not about fixing the problem. It's about treating the symptoms. And the symptoms of PTSD are treated with drugs. I'm not an asshole. I'm just the reality monster. That's just reality,
Well, what is so maddening, because I couldn't agree more, and this is when we talk about transition and we talk about those four all the time, because again, we are cross-pollinating the thought leaders in the first responder and the military space and the veteran space, and the people that are in the science and the medicine that are really progressive and talking about CTE and all these other areas. They're all saying the same thing. And once you can identify all these contributing factors, that is the most beautiful thing in the world, because if you can identify it, you can start fixing it. You can start addressing it. And in my world, to your point with the trolls on your Instagram post, a lot of times the pushback I get are from chiefs, are from city or county council members. These are people that go home 5 p.m. every night, sleep in their own bed, weekends off, don't get told you have to stay an extra shift. They're the ones saying, I don't think that the firefighters need to work less than 56. You work 40 hours, motherfucker, and you're not even standing up for your people that are dying of cancer, of autoimmune disease, cardiac arrest, strokes, suicides, addiction, divorce, alcoholism. We know this is a thing, and the same as you. And you can parallel even with the national conversation about obesity. 75% of our country is obese or overweight. Someone the other day told me, we're finally doing something about it with this current administration. I was like, I'm not seeing anything as far as, bolstering PE programs, supporting local farmers. So explain to me, what are we doing? Oh, well, now Ozempic is available. It's exactly what you're talking about. The people that are paying, lining the pockets of these people, they're not interested in healthy Americans. But all of a sudden, if you can pay thousands for a drug that will drop your body weight by starving you, doesn't make your heart and lungs any stronger, all of a sudden, apparently now that's a wellness initiative. So I couldn't agree more. I mean, we see it clear as fucking day.
I wrote this Substack article, Why is Reality Upside Down? It's the name of my Substack article. I'll shoot a link to you so you can, or if you want to post it, but it's kind of about, not about what we're talking about. It's completely different. But what I'm saying is kind of the point of the article is, why is reality upside down? Everything, the way everything is right now is the 180-degree opposite of the way it should be. Why? And, I used to think like the medical system was broken. I used to think, this is broken, that's broken. And now I'm older and wiser, and I've realized none of the systems are broken. They are working exactly how they were designed to work. They know what they're doing. Western medicine treats symptoms with pharmaceuticals while ignoring underlying root causes. That is the way the system is designed. That's the way the system works, because that's the way they want it to work, because that's the way they make a ton of money. As soon as you're healed, here's an interesting thing about the VA. The VA gets paid off of patients treated. That's where their funding comes from. So how are they ever incentivized to fix anyone? They're not. So all these different things is, again, we're really fighting beyond an uphill battle. My whole theory, and I say it in a million messages on that post I was telling you about, but my whole thing was and is that, especially with veterans, people are like, leave it to the professionals, or, clinicians, or, blah, 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 blah. And my whole thing is, how did that work out for Vietnam veterans? It didn't.
Yep.
It didn't. They're still slipping through the cracks. They've been freaking slipping through the cracks since they freaking came back home, right? So my point being is, we can't trust the system. And Vietnam veterans, if anyone could say, should be the people going, hey, dude, you guys need to figure this stuff out yourselves, because we relied on them, which was kind of that generation, the baby boomers. That's how that generation was. Defer to the doctors. but they know that doing that does not work. I obviously not a Vietnam veteran, but me looking at the Vietnam veterans, how they were treated, that whole thing, I saw that and I went, dude, if you do what they did, you'll get the results that they got. So my whole thing was, I am going to start figuring this stuff out for myself, and I'm going to put out the word to help others, other veterans, because it's up to us to save us. No one's coming. No one's coming. And that is the responsibility. And by the way, no one, just because you did service in the military doesn't mean you're owed, something forever. Look, VA benefits, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying, like, just because you did service, it does not, you are still, this is what I'm trying to say. You are still ultimately responsible for your health. You can't just blindly trust the VA, just like you can't blindly trust a hospital. Did you earn your VA healthcare? Absolutely, 100%. Keep that for life. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, you need to be your own case manager, and you need to be responsible for your health, and you need to do some research, and you need to figure it out, because they're not going to do the work for you. It's just reality. Do I think they should? Yeah, they should definitely do way more than they're doing, but it's the government. And the problem I have with people in the military that like talk smack about the VA, I'm like, yeah, but you were in, dude. Like, you know how the government works. Like, you were in the military, you know how inefficient that system is. You can't get out and then go to the VA and expect it's somehow going to be radically like amazing. Like, no, it's going to be, it's a part of the same system that you saw was super jacked up. Does that make sense? So, I just think that we really need to put in effort to help each other, because ultimately we're the ones who know, going back to what you said, we're the ones who experience it. Our theories, our ideas, our solutions are based on experience, not on theory and not on education. And to me, that has infinitely more value than somebody that read it in a book.
100%. And I've said this a lot, our military members, our police officers, firefighters, paramedics, those are the voices we need to hear, because those are the ones that are there. This is why I do what I do. 1,250, I think we're 60 interviews now, because there's no filter. It's like, well, you've got this English dude that became an American firefighter, and you've got this, Delta operator, and they're talking about these things, and no one can interrupt. And you could be in Durban or Tibet or whatever. And if you're listening to this, you get to hear the whole conversation, because like you, we've waited for people to fix obesity. Yeah. I mean, how many times has it gone across the aisle? The OxyContin was FDA approved, and 100,000 Americans die every year from the opioid crisis. I mean, our schools.
I'll tell you a quick story, because this. So before I worked on the SEAL team, I was. I was still working in Hollywood, but I was also bodyguarding at the time. So I was doing, EP work I did that, I don't know, almost 10 years. And 1 year, I don't remember, I was doing the Nickelodeon's Kid Choice Awards, right? I was bodyguarding some big music industry person, L.A. Reid, actually. I was bodyguarding L.A. Reid, and one of the biggest names in music. And I end up going to the Nickelodeon's Kids' Choice Awards, and it was, I'm trying to remember the exact thing, but it was this health initiative through Michelle Obama, right? And I swear to God, the catering was McDonald's. So it was this children's health initiative initiated by Michelle Obama, and it was all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. And then I went to the food, and it was I'm pretty sure it was McDonald's. It might've been Burger King. Don't quote me on that, but it was one of the top. It was either McDonald's, Burger King. It was one of them. And I just remember being like, the official event is the Michelle Obama, like, children's health initiative, and you've got it catered by a fast food company. Like, and I just remember thinking, like, how do you do that with a straight face? That's insane. Like, how how am I at this point where no one went, hey, call me crazy here, but isn't that kind of a, contradiction? Isn't that hypocritical? Um, it's just, man, dude, no, at the end of the day, we're living in a society right now. And I'm a very non-political person. I don't watch the news. I couldn't tell you what's going on in the world right now.
I'm the
And I
same.
don't care. I don't care because it doesn't affect me directly at my house. And until it does, then I'll care. But and I'm sure people are like, no, you got to care. No, I don't. I believe that they're trying to get us to care, to waste our time, because ultimately you caring, you're still not allowed to change it. The only thing that you can do is change yourself. So I'm putting that time and effort into building myself up because that's what they fear. They fear you having power. They fear you having a seat at the table. And the only way you're going to pull up a chair is by pulling it up yourself. They're not going to pull one to you. So I don't waste my time with that. I spend my time working on stuff that's going to improve me because I believe they want us to waste our time watching them fight back and forth. Because at the end of the day, at the top, it's all the same club. Look at all the ex-presidents at events afterwards. They're homies. They talk, they smile, they laugh. It's a game. My point that I'm making is that, I think we're at a point in the world now where the elites, the people in charge have figured out, and COVID, I believe, was the test. They've now figured out that they can't be held accountable because we're not holding them accountable. And so now they've pretty much figured out they can do whatever they want. And so guess what? They're doing whatever they want. And you can see it. You can see it. It's changed. If you look at Watergate, that was a level 10 scandal that led to Richard Nixon freaking resigning. That wouldn't even blip on the radar today. It'd be maybe one day in the news cycle and then it would be gone. No one cares. No one cares. And again, when this COVID stuff was happening and people weren't freaking rioting in the streets, well, they were, but about something different. But when they were doing all that crazy COVID shit and people just went, yeah, take the vaccine. They went, oh shit. Okay. I think it surprised them, to be honest. I think the elites were surprised by what they could get away with at COVID. And they were like, man, dude, this is way easier than we thought. Orwell was right. And you've seen it now. It's turned into this, ultimately, we have to take matters into our own hands because no one's going to help us. Because if they were going to, they would have already.
Well, this is what I say again, going back to the obesity, because it's a apolitical issue. Someone whether you're rich, poor, whatever, is fat, and they're going to die early. Period. Point blank. And that's 30 plus years that we've been climbing and climbing and climbing. So that's left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. So again, perfect example of no one gives a shit. The opioid crisis, that's a couple of decades now, more so. The fact that our children are rehearsing their murders in school, that's from the 90s as well. So if they were actually trying to fix anything, it would have already happened. And I think what was terrifying, COVID really pulled back the curtain and showed that if you get people tired, stressed, angry, you start, as Orwell says, the real control was the keeping people just above poverty the whole time.
Yeah.
So you have to work. Mom's working, dad's working. There's firefighters working extra shifts. Sometimes they sign up. Sometimes they're forced. And then you have a COVID event. Instead of people going, well, this seems to be a real virus, but it also doesn't seem to be dangerous for most healthy people, pretty much no child. We need to move. We need to be together. We need to eat well. We need daylight. We need to maybe focus on our sleep and meditate. And then we'll protect the people that are vulnerable, the autoimmune, the immune compromised and the elderly. And then we'll just keep the world moving. But it wasn't that. Families were ripped apart. Friendships were ripped apart. And I think that's what they were really watching. It's like, wow, we've got them to the point now. We just have to snap our fingers. George Floyd, COVID, you name it. And all of a sudden, they're at each other's throats. And one of my guests said something a few months ago now, and it was perfect. He said, you're in a medieval village in England, and you've got the peasants fighting with each other. He said, where are they not looking? The castle. I mean, that's it. That's a mic drop moment. So it's not,
Mm-hmm.
a conspiracy theory. It's just literally, and I'm very optimistically, and I'm looking at the beautiful acts of humanity in Venezuela at the moment, and I'm looking at how all these World Cup fans are interacting with other countries. That is our shared humanity, and I really believe that there's going to be an awakening, because I think people are finally starting to wake up.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the, I said, I've literally said this now for, God, I've said it for probably 2 or 3 years now. I've said, because a lot of people say it's getting worse and worse, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. And I've said for a while, just because I'm a big history person, I was like, dude, the pendulum swings, and it swings both ways. And it's if you look at what the universe is constantly searching for, it's balance and homeostasis. And so it's impossible for something to go one way forever. It's always going to come back and find, a revert to the mean, revert to the center, right? So optimistically, I agree with you. That being said, we definitely have some things coming up that I know people are not ready for. And with what you were talking about, I'm very optimistic. However, people are not ready for the technology that I know for a fact already exists. People are not ready for it. And I am not very optimistic, quite frankly, on how people are going to react, because it's just, we're just not designed for it. Period. We're not designed for the level of technology that's coming.
Are you talking
psyops
type technology or militarily?
I'm talking literally every single level you can imagine. People are not ready for the military technology. They're not ready for the civilian technology. They're not ready. Like, I mean, we are so fastly approaching a point at which daily the world will start to change daily so quickly that people will be struggling to catch up. And, you look at AI, look at 5 years, look at what AI could do 5 years ago, look at it today. Now jump ahead 5 years. We are very close to getting to a point for the last, I'm just going to use 100. No, 100. I'm going to use 150 years. For the last 150-ish years, 125, mankind has been able to conceptualize the future. I forget, it's like 1905, somebody wrote a book or earlier about robots. In the Wild West, they were talking about, metal humans. I mean, this goes back actually hundreds of years. But my point being is, we have been able to conceptualize what the future will be for a long time. We are, I believe, under a decade away from being unable to conceptualize the future. Does that make sense? Like,
it does.
40 years,
terrifying.
50 years, 60, in the 50s, 75 years ago, you're like, one day there'll be flying cars. One day, you'll be able to have a shoe phone. Yes. And you were right about all of those things. There'll be a computer that'll do this for you. But we are close to a point where we're not even going to know what's going to be possible in 50 years. And that's, people like answers. They like to imagine. They like to know. And I think very soon we're going to hit a point where people are not even going to be able to, they're going to have no idea what the future is going to be like. And I think that's going to be a very scary moment for a lot of people.
How do we combat that? Because I mean, the numbers of people compared to the numbers of puppeteers in this particular case, obviously, is, the ratio is immense. And I forget who it was now, one of the guests recently said, they can really see that one of the biggest forms of air quotes terrorism would be against these AI centers. And even from a an environmental point of view, the fact that our clean water is being used for cooling, people are starting to go, wait a second, I'm fine without ChatGPT if it doesn't destroy my country, for example. So what if you could write the end of the Orwellian book in this case, what does the resistance have to be to make sure that this technology is harnessed and used in a good way, but not abused, which is what it sounds like you're hinting to a little bit?
Well, so I'll give you an example of just, again, what I'm about to say is a fact. People can disagree with it, but it's a fact. And what I'm about to say is very, 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 very relevant to this community that I'm talking to right now. From right now, going back as far back as you can go in the history of mankind, the ruling elites have needed one thing to wage war. You know what that one thing was?
Educate me.
The warrior class. They have always needed the warrior class in order to wage war. Napoleon couldn't fight by himself. He figured out ways. I think it was Napoleon who came up with the concept of medals, I believe somebody told me. But the elites, Genghis Khan didn't conquer by himself. He had, granted, Genghis Khan was actually a warrior himself, so it's probably a bad example. But what I'm saying is these, politicians and these rulers have needed the warrior class in order to take and hold territory and to wage war and to do all of those things. We are fastly approaching a point in which one person is going to be able to build an army and not need any human warrior class at all to wage war. That is a scary fact, because there is a checks and balances slightly within the warrior class where we at a certain point could go, no. Now, granted, throughout history, the warrior class has been manipulated, to do those things. And I can tell you the manipulation that goes on daily in every military today. But fundamentally, you still need the permission. We are fastly approaching a point where that permission is no longer needed, no longer necessary, and no longer relevant. They can build a literal robot army and wage war by themselves. That couldn't be more Orwellian. I don't think that's something that people have really thought about yet,
It is terrifying. I've heard Elon Musk referred to in the past as the Bond villain. And it's like, we kind of laugh a little bit. And then you take a moment and you're like, oh shit, no, he actually could. Like that amount of wealth, that individual could build, like you said, build an army, circumnavigate, any interests of the country whatsoever, and be one of the sociopaths that I used to as a little British boy watch, as he stroked his cat and was getting ready to obliterate the world. But now, and it was funny as well. Your company is Saberdyne Systems. As a stuntman, I worked in the Terminator 2 stunt show in Universal.
Oh, really?
And that's was
awesome.
Cyberdyne Systems. So I was playing the T-1000. So it's so bizarre having, played dress up.
Yeah, that's part of where the name came from. It's a play on Terminator for sure, 100%. But the whole thing too is that we, like Elon Musk is a great example of people like, oh, Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, blah, blah, blah. Elon Musk is not the richest man in the world. Not by a long shot. Elon Musk is the richest man in the world that people know about. Elon Musk is poor compared to the people that don't want people to know about their wealth. And those are the people pulling the strings, and those are the puppet masters. They don't want anyone to know who they are. Elon Musk is nothing compared to them. And so when I look at someone like Elon, the fact that he's out there tells me that he's not to be feared. It's the ones you don't know about that you got to fear.
So how do people combat that? Because it's interesting. We're turning this corner right when and I've had this on the show over and over again. I'm sure this is something that you align with as well. We have 20 years of war recently. I've also had Vietnam vets and even World War II vets on here. And the checks and balances conversation, we've gone from there are some conflicts that are, absolutely unavoidable. And, there's times where we've literally, overturned a truly, truly tyrannical regime like World War II. And then there's times where our men and women have been sent, for a top politician's whim, and a lot of coffins have come back draped in flags. And then after the fact, they learn, well, why were we there? Were we lied to about WMDs? Whatever the thing was. And there's a lot of organizational betrayal in a lot of our veterans now. And to your point, there seems like an awakening even just in war itself. And I think that the evolution of man, in my opinion, is kindness, compassion, service, selflessness, community. I think if you look at how brutal we were when we were cavemen and how we've walked through, there's a kind of through line of compassion. But it's terrifying because right when maybe there's a human spiritual awakening, now you've got this technological component. So what needs to happen for the rest of us to combat these dangers that are lurking in the shadows at the moment?
So the fundamental mistake that I think a lot of people are making is thinking that you can stop it. That's ridiculous. Look at throughout history how many times they've tried to stop technological process or progress. It's happened throughout history. People tried to stop the locomotive, right? It's never going to work. You're never going to stop the relentless march of technology. And so people going, oh, we need to not do AI, we need to blah, blah, blah. The reality is someone is always going to do it. Human cloning, someone's always going to do it. Whatever it is, there's always going to be that person without morals that does it. So the only way that the good people of the world can basically fight back is you got to do it too. The only way to combat an evil robot army is with a good robot army. And that's my take on it, is we're not going to win by not playing the game, because somebody's playing the game. So the only way to win is to play too and play it better.
I want to ask one more philosophical conversation, then we'll get back to your timeline because we haven't even made it into the military yet. My opinion, my perspective is and I've got to vote, I think 2 or 3 times since I've been in this country, is every time we get to an election, you hear the same statement made. We've got to choose the lesser of 2 evils. Now, this is out of 330 million Americans. Not all are qualified, obviously. Some are babies and shit. But there's a lot of people that are great leaders that simply cannot make it because they, A, don't have the funds, or B, they have the ethics and won't play in that game. If you were king for a day and you could wave a magic wand and change the way that we choose leaders so that robot army is under someone who has morals and really is, doing it for the benefit of the nation, what would you do to change that selection system so the real good leaders of the states could ultimately rise up into that position?
Oh, I mean, what I'm going to say is crazy now, but it's right. Democracy is a horrible form of government. We're not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic, but it's still a shitty form of government. What we need is a benevolent dictatorship. That is the best form of government. And so the problem with voting is that stupid people vote, and the majority of people are stupid and uninformed, and they are manipulated. And therefore, the entire voting system is fundamentally flawed because you've got people that don't know picking people that are chosen for you. We don't have the freedom to choose who we want in this country. We have the freedom to choose who they give us. And, the Democrats have proven over and over again. And again, I'm not a political person. I'm just saying it's a fact that if you look at the Democrat primaries, multiple times the Democrats have basically said to Democrats, we don't care what you want. You're choosing this person. Bernie Sanders won. They gave it to Hillary Clinton, and they didn't have a vote for Kamala Harris. They just chose her. It's not a democracy. They don't care. They're making the choices for their own people, right? So if I was king for a day, I would take humans out of the equation. I'd have a robot run the country. I'm not joking. A benevolent dictatorship ran by an ultra benevolent AI that made the decisions that led to the most amount of benefit for the most people. That's what I would do. Because as soon as you have a human is able to be corrupted. A human wants human things. But if you made an AI specifically to govern in the best way possible, and you'd have to do a lot of work to ensure that it truly was, that programming was clean. But to me, that's the best form of government. Because right now, we've got a bunch of people that are not in the know and are getting manipulated by a system that is based on money to pick two people that we're not picking. And that's a shit system of government. I don't care what anyone says. If people think that that's freedom, dude, come on. That's what they're telling you it is. I don't vote. And people are like, dude, you were in the military. What do you mean you don't vote? I don't vote because I am expressing my right to not partake in a system that is not fair. It's not a fair system. It is, by voting, they're giving you the illusion of choice because you're not really choosing. You're choosing the choices they give you, and it's one of two. So I go, you know what? I'm not doing that. I'm not voting. Can I complain? Hell yes, I can complain, just like the George Carlin model. I can complain because I didn't vote. You did. You can't complain because you chose one of them. I mean, I'm being, facetious here and joking, but that's what I would do if I was king for a day. I'd have a robot run the country.
I've never had that answer before, but I also love that answer. And it aligns with, with what I said. I think we don't have a democracy, we have a democracy. It's the aristocracy pretending to be leaders.
Yeah.
They're playing dress up
100%.
too.
Yeah, Hunter. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all smoke and mirrors.
It is. And I've said, look, if we had an effective system, then what would happen is, let's say in a fair system, you'd had 5 candidates and one won and the other 4 didn't. And we're all, behind the other 4. And we're like, man, ours didn't win. But yours is still really good. So let's get on with the 4 years and we'll try again. Because if they were the 5 best leaders in the country competing, then you'd end up with a great leader, no matter if they lean slightly this way, whatever. But that's not the case. They're awful, and they lean sideways to the extreme now.
I've got a lot of good leadership, lessons, and I've served under a lot of good leaders and been under some bad ones, not in the military, but been under some bad ones. And the thing that I've learned is one of my favorite qualities. If somebody asks me what makes a good leader, I mean, there's many, but the answer I like to give is the number one quality to be a good leader that I've found is a person who doesn't want to lead. They're forced to lead because of whatever, or they're chosen or whatever, but they didn't want to. Because the people want to lead don't want to lead. They want power. And that's very different than leading.
Absolutely. I want to kind of skip a little bit of your entry into the military because we've had such an interesting conversation already. And I'm going to go to a kind of 2-part question. I talk about people that have been deployed in a combat situation, and then I want to get to your wounds and then your transition. Regardless of the politics that sent you out there, and this could be any part of your career, was there a point where you realized or you saw that there were some horrendous people that needed to be addressed? Now, obviously, in the tip of the spear profession that you held, you were sent to find those bad people, but a lot of people as well, there's a conversation that they shouldn't be in there, et cetera, and a lot of the moral injuries of our veterans coming home. What do we do? But you hear so many stories of, yes, when you were placed in that position, there were some atrocities happening, and our men and women in uniform absolutely made a difference. So was there kind of like a first time where you're like, oh shit, yes, this is something that we are sent here to do, and this person does need to be removed so they can stop, doing these things to these other people?
Yeah, well, I was very lucky. I was very lucky because of where I was at. So we were, we were going exclusively after very bad people. They just that was our job, and we were targeting by person, not randomly, or we knew who we were going after every night. We knew their name, we knew who they were, we knew what they had done, we knew a lot about them. And so for me, I never had that moral injury because I knew when I, came in the door, I knew what they had done to get me there. And so I'd say from the very beginning, I mean, the first mission that I did with the unit, at least in Iraq, was a hostage rescue attempt. I don't even remember. I'm trying to remember who the hostages were that we were going after. But anyways, that was the first target that I did, and the hostages had been moved, but the people had them there. I don't know, 2 days we figured out before. I don't remember the details, but so from the very first mission I had there, it was very much, we were going after very bad people. Probably the one though that I'll never forget, and I do talk about this in my book, was my team leader at the time, Shannon McKinney, God rest his soul. He invited me in on the interrogation of this guy. And this guy was a V-bed maker. So he was facilitating the suicide bombers, and then he was building the IEDs and then pairing up, bomber with the V-bed and blah, blah, blah. And so I sat in there on the interrogation with Mac, and he did his thing. Obviously, this is through an interpreter. And then he was like, do you have any questions? One of the things I always liked about the unit too is no matter who, there was always this kind of, the difference in experience of me and my team leader at the time was vastly dramatic, right? And yet, because you're all at that level, there's still that respect of like, he's going to eventually be me one day. So it's like, hey, do you have any questions? And I was like, actually, I do. So I asked the guy, he asked all the tactical questions, like all the important information that we would need for follow-on targets, he asked. So there was nothing for me to say. So I didn't ask a question like that. I asked a question that I was just curious about, which was, I said, look, man, I'm in your country. I am a foreign troop in your country. You want to kill me? You want to blow me up? Fucking cool, dude. I am with you. If you were in my country, let's say you hate Bush because Bush was the president at the time. You hate Bush and you want to pull Bush out because you think he's bad for the world, and you're in my country and you're driving down the road, I'm going to kill the fuck out of you. I'm going to kill the fuck out of you and all your buddies. I'm going to blow them with IEDs. I'm with you. I would do the same thing. So I don't have a problem with that because I'm a foreign troop in your country. I accept that. Here's what I wouldn't do. What I wouldn't do is make a bomb that blew up 20 of my women and children to kill 5 of you. Now that I wouldn't do. And that I don't understand. And I want to understand, how do you justify that to yourself? Because I get you wanting to kill me. Totally, we're cool on that. But I don't understand how you do that. And his answer, again, through the interpreter, was essentially that, and I don't want to talk about religion, but the short version is, through the religion, it's justified. And then I said, okay, we'll go with that. I get how you justify it to yourself. But what if the father of one of the children you killed doesn't believe the same thing that you believe? And I'll never forget his answer. It was, well, he's wrong. He's wrong. And at that moment, I remember looking at him because it had to go to the interpreter. And then I had to absorb it from the interpreter. And then I was looking at him when I heard it. And I just remember at that point thinking, you're just a broken robot and you need to go away. No moral judgment. You're just a malfunctioning robot and you just need to go away. And that's how I viewed those people. I don't think they're morally bad, they're on the other side, whatever, but there was a lot of malfunctioning robots and they just needed to be removed from the planet. And that's the way I saw it.
Did you see any commonalities between these horrific humans? And it's not like you're getting an entire bio on them, but contributing factors that took what was once a giggling little toddler and now a jihadist or, whatever role they were holding as far as the murderous intent.
Well, I learned a lot. I mean, I learned a lot I learned a lot of things that, I mean, there's a lot of things I learned that are, one day maybe I'll write articles or something, but there's a lot of things that I've learned firsthand in Iraq that are not what people think. I'll give you an example. And this guy gave me, I got this from multiple people, but one of the things that is common, or is considered common knowledge, sorry, would be that all of the, V-bed suicide bombers, or the, S-vest wearers, or S-belt, whatever the hell you want, that they're all these religious fanatics, and they're all doing it because of the religion. And it's, it's a religious fanaticism thing. And it's almost like, I'm trying to think how to say this, but that's the focus, that the way people think of it, it's like this crazy radical Islam, and they don't really think of any other factors. That's like the common, when you think of like a suicide bomber, that's what you think. It's way more complicated than that, and I learned. The level of manipulation is unreal. When you actually talk to the guys making the bombs and giving them to the kids, you realize that they don't believe the shit that they're preaching. They're getting paid, and they don't believe in the jihad stuff. They don't believe in the fucking religion stuff. They are using that to manipulate these young kids who, I'll be honest with you, most of them are lonely kids who don't have many options, have probably never had a girlfriend, and they manipulate them with the promise of women and being seen as heroes. And guess what? It's the same manipulation that we're doing to our little boys. It's the same fucking thing. And people disagree with that and be like, no, what they're doing. No, it's the same shit. I saw it firsthand. We had a kid get blown up. So in all the V beds, they put a trigger in them. So what's supposed to happen is, the kid or whoever it is, pulls in front of the government building, I don't know, and detonates himself. Well, what we found out is that every V-bed maker installs a remote switch, and they're watching the person. And if they take too long, they give them the chance, or, I mean, maybe some don't, I don't know. But, they'll detonate it. And one kid we got a hold of didn't detonate it. He got detonated. He got blown out of the car. I forget exactly how, but somehow like the seat wasn't bolted in very well. So it's like when the explosion went off, it like launched him out of the car. And anyways, his whole thing was he wasn't going to do it. And you just, what I realized is there's like this entire massive campaign of manipulation between the upper level jihadist and the lower level people doing it. No different that there is, in different, other organizations or enterprises or criminal enterprises or whatever. It's the same system. The people at the top, what's the term? What is it when you kill your martyrdom? Martyrdom's a young man's game. Those people want these kids who have no self-worth to martyr themselves. They don't want to do it. They want to live. So they find all these other kids and blow them up, and they keep making bombs. And then, dude, they've got families. There's not a house that I went into that didn't have a wife and kids, or several wives and kids. It's really weird, man. It's a weird, you just get there and you start going and doing these things, and you start realizing that what you were told it is not what it really is. And make no mistake, that is in no way a justification of, of any of that at all. I'm just saying it's a lot more complicated. When I saw it firsthand, it was a lot more complicated than I thought it was.
This is just a common thread. And again, going back to the humanity, the commonality that we're seeing of all these, football fans around the world, or like I said, these international teams that are, as we speak, burrowing through concrete that might collapse and kill them to try and get to, a child, a cat, whatever it is that they're pursuing. And I've always said this: when you reverse engineer any human being to the age of a toddler, they're not thinking about building bombs. They're not thinking about sticking a needle in their arm and living under a bridge or selling their body for sex or joining a gang. They're laughing, they're chasing a ball, they're drawing with crayons, they're just being kids. And then life happens. And some of them, are born in Afghanistan or Iraq or Gaza, and some of them are born in New York or London or Oslo. And every single time when you look back in history, it is the manipulation of a few people that are in pursuit of money or power or whatever it looks like that are oppressing the masses. And as you said, it's old men sending young men to war, whether it's, in a jihadist point of view in the Middle East, or whether it's British or American uniform here, and then leaning into that propaganda. And, again, going back to what I said about the evolution of man, I believe that kindness and compassion are our future. Let's take the holy book that I was raised with as a young man. It's called the Bible. Part 2, the New Testament, isn't about killing people. It's about forgiveness and kindness and service and selflessness and community. So I think that was a message from the past, like, hey, we tried the whole war oppression thing. It was really shit. Don't do that. Try something else. And yet, as we said, even with this manipulation and this terrifying future of technology, the few are still tugging on the puppet strings. And just as we're trying to awaken, they're trying to get one step ahead and manipulating social media or buying news channels or whatever it is. But I truly believe that shared humanity, is what will ultimately, show its face. But the origin story of all these, I had a child soldier from Sierra Leone on the show. It was the same thing. It doesn't matter where you are. It's a few oppressing the masses and saying, that is your enemy. Go fight them. I'm going to be over here in this other building, enjoying my, my lifestyle.
Yeah. And again, it's a cycle that has been as old as, it's as old as mankind itself. And I don't see it changing anytime soon, sadly. And it's, the older I get, the more obvious it all is. And it's, man, it's like when kids ask me about joining today, man. That's just like, I'm like, oh, I hate getting asked that question, because it's just a hard question to answer now, it's just a hard question to answer now, because I don't want to, I know what they're seeking, and I don't want to sway them from, because it's like me. I know that if I didn't join, I mean, we wouldn't be talking, but let's say we were, I would have regretted it. It would have been a hole in my life. It took me doing it to know that technically, in hindsight, it was just something I had to do. But now I see the mechanism and what it was and what it is, and what I was looking for and what I was missing in myself at the time, and all those different things. And so it's a really interesting, when kids ask me, man, I'm just like, it's just a hard question to answer. I feel trapped every time, because I want to tell them, dude, like, no matter what you do, it's not going to make you whole. You're not going to suddenly be like, I'm enough because you got to any unit. I promise you. But at the same time, it's something that I understand what they're looking for. And I understand that if they don't join, they won't. Let me say it this way. I wouldn't change a thing. Put it that way. I wouldn't change a thing.
King for a day question again. A military is necessary, especially as a deterrent. I mean, no one can question that. And there are some countries around the world that have done a great job having a strong military and barely ever using them. If you were a king for a day, what would you change about the way that our military is used so that maybe you could look a young man or woman in the eye and say, this is something that you should do?
Hmm. I mean, there'd be so many things to change. I don't even know where to begin. But I mean, I'd have to redo everything. I think that most things can be accomplished with a very small footprint. I think special operation. I don't see much use for conventional forces these days. It's the logistics are too big. It's just like, if you look at just look at what happened in Syria. That's all you need to do. Look at what happened in Syria. ISIS was like the biggest thing there was. And then one day they weren't there anymore. Did you hear about it?
Nope.
Were their boots on the ground, freaking 82nd Airborne, 101st? But they were suddenly gone, weren't they?
Mm-hmm.
That is the way to fight war. I'll tell you, something that pissed me off more than anything was the use of National Guard in Iraq. That just, I on the hierarchy of things I didn't agree with. I just, man, I did not agree with that at all. They didn't have enough. You're taking fucking not even infantry units. You're taking, combat engineers and throwing them basically on the streets of Baghdad down fucking Route Irish. It just, and again, no offense to anyone in the National Guard, but I'm saying if you're not active duty, you should not be in active combat. You don't have enough time to train to go do that. That's not what National Guard is for. And yet they were using the National Guard like it was, like it was the 82nd Airborne or the 101st or second cap, whoever. And it was, if you look at the casualties that came from the National Guard, it is so fucking disproportionate. And also they don't have the resources, they don't have the right equipment. It just, man, that really pissed me off. When I was in Iraq and I saw the National Guard, it just drove me fucking crazy, because I was like, they just shouldn't be here, and why were they there? Because, you're trying to hold off an entire country against itself. That whole situation was just really done very poorly. I think Bremer, that guy should have been, as far as I'm concerned, executed. He should have been killed. And I'll say it to his face. Like, that guy is responsible for thousands and thousands and that probably tens of thousands of deaths is on that guy's head for what he did. He probably is retired, living in Virginia in a huge mansion on the river. But if you look at the fiasco that was Iraq, he probably, in my opinion, takes a majority stake of ownership.
You also just hear, the Halliburtons and all the people that made so much money. And I listened to, so many of your community, especially the Green Berets and some of the other areas, say the same exact thing with Afghanistan. Should have gone in, shut down the training camps, taken out the main targets, and then left. And, coming from a firefighter from another country that is not pretending that I know about military tactics or anything like that, I can see, well, yeah, because then you remove that element of seeming occupation of a country that therefore creates more opponents, more enemies, more terrorists. So
why do you think,
please.
Why do you think we stayed?
For me, the same way as why are Americans still fat, to me, I can't help but be skeptical and go, well, there's a shitload of money to be made. Why would you end a war when a lot of companies are making money hand over fist?
What do you think Afghanistan makes more than anyone else?
I'm not sure.
The poppy fields.
Oh God, yeah, that's another entire
Where
conversation. Yes,
where do you think that goes?
this way.
The drug companies. What drug does that specifically go into?
OxyContin, for example.
Just follow the money, dude. It's the most obvious shit ever.
You know what's really interesting is when I started this podcast, which is 10 years ago now, not prying or anything, but when it came up in conversation, I'm very passionate about removing prohibition of addiction, and
Mhm.
copying the Portuguese model and trying to get people healed and in the hands of the medical community rather than the underworld. The poppy fields came up, and I swear to God, for like 3 or 4 years, everyone was so tight-lipped, and I wasn't pushing or prying or anything. It just came up, and it was like, boom, this steel door came down. I was like, oh, okay, that was interesting. And then one day, someone started talking about it, and then all of a sudden, they're like, yeah, one day we were told to burn an entire field. The next time we were told, oh, don't touch that field. And you start to see then the signs of the fuckery that was going on behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. At first it's destroy, and then the next thing you know, they're like, no, 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 no. We can use this. Next thing you know, it's harvesting. Next thing you know, it's all money, man. It's all money. Plus, you throw in the rare earth minerals in Afghanistan. I mean, it's all money and resources. That's what it all is, and it's all a game being played on a massive scale, and we're not a part of it. I mean, we are, but we're not in control of it, and we don't know the game that's actually being played. We know that we know the game's being played on us, but we don't know what the real game is. We're pieces on a board, and we don't know what the game is. But you're in it, and you're a player, and you're being moved, but you don't know what the rules are, and you don't know what the game is.
Well, this is again why these conversations are so important. I mean, you have stood, in places that most of us will never see. So there's no point James Gearing saying, well, here's my opinion on Afghanistan, because I wasn't there, and I have the humility to know I wasn't there. But when I hear all these voices, and I always say the Venn diagram starts overlapping, that middle piece, the truth really starts emerging. And it's because a
Yeah,
lot of our men and women in the military are just having the courage, there's no other way to describe it, the courage to say, no, here's how it actually was. You were
yeah,
circumnavigating the Fox and the CNNs and the left and the right and, the social
hmm,
media distortion and everything. You're like, oh
yeah,
no, but this
yeah,
person was actually there. And this is what they
yeah.
were seeing. When you hear that enough times, then we can start going, I think this was actually a thing.
Well, it's just like I'll give an example of Iraq. Like I remember, we would like let's say bomb a house or whatever. And I mean, I'm telling you, if we bombed a house, the people were bad. Period. It's not debatable. It's just like when Pete Hegseth says, like, look, the boat had drug dealers. I don't. You guys can say whatever you want. We know who they were. Like I know why he's saying that because I've been a part of those things and I get it. Like, no, no, no. We know. Like, I knew who was in the house. I knew. We knew all of that. And I mean, this is years ago compared to now, but uh, where I'm going with that is, we'd blow up the house and then the freaking news would go interview people that lived in the area. And they're like, oh, no, that was a school, whatever. And it was just, it happens so often, and you just see, and the news believes them. And you're like, guys, what are you basing that off of? Like, what evidence do you have? You're listening to these people who are incentivized to lie, and yet you're reporting it as if it's truth. It's just it's a hard it's hard being probably like it's hard being a cop today. It was hard being a soldier, being overseas, and you're just seeing all, especially Iraq, and you're just seeing all these lies put out every single day that are not true. It for a fact, and it wears on you.
I want to hit one more area and then we'll go to Baghdad. I've talked about this a lot. The two main channels that we are exposed to, propaganda channels, which call themselves news. The screen is divided to four, and then four assholes are arguing with each other for an hour or whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we get either one side or the other. Either let God kill them all, let God sort them out, or they're all
Yeah,
baby
yeah.
killers. It's these two extremes again. But what we don't also hear on those channels is the kindness and compassion from so many of our service members, and I've heard so many stories. So when you reflect back now, wherever you found yourself, what were the moments of kindness and compassion that you remember, whether it was your own men or the indigenous population you were serving alongside?
I was always, we didn't come into contact with the normal populace very often because, again, we were usually hitting targets that the intel was pretty good. So the people were bad and the kids didn't like us, or because of their parents or whatever. But I do very specifically remember being on a trip. I forget what year this was, 04, I think. And it was when I just happened to be there when they first voted. And I remember driving through Baghdad, and I don't remember what I was on. I have no idea. I went through Baghdad. Somebody offered me a trip to go through Baghdad on an Abrams, and I was like, "Oh, hell yes!" So I did that. It might have been then. I don't remember, but I just remember going through Baghdad. I have no idea why, and I remember all the people pointing their finger with the ink at us, and they were they were genuinely happy that they had the opportunity to vote. And you could see it. And that's probably the moment where I went, that's good. You know what I mean? For that country as a whole, that good for them. I'm glad they're happy. You know what I mean? So that was probably the biggest humanitarian thing I can think of offhand.
Beautiful. Well, staying in Baghdad then, obviously a year later was when you were wounded. So talk me about that day again. Obviously, you don't have to talk about anything that you can't talk about, but let's talk about it in general, and then we'll kind of move forward to the physical and the mental recovery from that.
Yeah. I mean, that night was just, as I've said before, it was just a bunch of things that usually were one way were a slightly different way, and there was at least between 10 and 20 things that were just different that day. And it was Sadr City, and we did a raid at night going after, this was actually a Zarqawi target. And we were chasing that son of a bitch for years. And we ended up hitting a house, and that house very quickly, it became obvious that the house that we had hit was the wrong house. And again, I actually can't say why, but there's a reason. And then my team got pulled out of that house, and we started moving through the shitty area that is Sadr City. And then they're like, "Oh, it's this house." So we make entry on that house. I entered in the back first because I was a breacher, started to clear through that house. I've told this story before. In my head, I thought the gunfire started before we got in the house. Apparently it didn't start till we were in, which makes sense in hindsight. My buddy told me about that when he read the book. He's like, "Dude, it didn't happen that way. It happened this way." And I was like, "Really? Holy shit." I remember it the other way, but whatever. But so apparently I got in the house. I cleared a couple rooms, came into contact with one guy in particular, and then was in a hallway. And I don't know if the shooting started before. It could go either way, but I don't know if the shooting started outside before we were in the hallway or not. I do not remember. But what happened, at least for us, was they started shooting. They shot 4 of our guys that went around the front of the building. So they shot 4 of our guys from the front room. And then me and 2 other guys were in the hallway, and we were going down the hallway towards that room that they were shooting out of at the front. And then they shot us through the wall. And the guy next to me was hit, I want to say 3 times, could be wrong. And, he's like, "I'm hit." And I mean, the volume of fire was I mean, you're talking about probably 2 AKs from, 4 feet away. It was extreme. And so we're like, obviously you don't continue going that direction. So we went back, and then we were in a, fight in that hallway. They were still shooting out the front at the guys in the front. And then there's no way there's no way for me to explain it. You'd have to see it visually, but essentially we were just in everything's terrain dependent in combat. And we were just in a bad tactical position. That's all there is to it. And so we couldn't just assault that room because we had to go down the hallway that they already shot through the wall. So it's like, it was really, and the door was at the end. So it's not like you can throw a curveball grenade. It was just a bad situation. I mean, like if we had a drone now with an explosive and we could just flown the drone in the room, that would have been amazing, right? But we didn't have that. And so we made a quick plan, and the guy that was next to me was going to get a grenade, and essentially I was going to shoot, and we had a plan. And then the next thing you know, the whole world, as far as I was concerned, exploded. Blew off my night vision goggles, blew off my Oakleys, blew off my night vision goggles, blew off my night vision goggle mount, messed up my helmet pretty good, and obviously, took, multiple chunks out of my right arm. And I thought my right arm was gone. That's what it felt like. I know that sounds weird, but it because it killed the nerve, it felt like it was not there. It just felt like it was gone. So I thought my right arm had gotten blown off. And then I remember I couldn't see anything because I was in night vision, and then I was completely blacked out. So I don't remember. I didn't see. One of the guys that I was blown up with was in the room. I don't remember seeing him. I have no idea where he was. I don't remember seeing anyone but myself. I remember hearing more gunfire going on. I was very confused. And I remember searching for my arm on the ground because my brain played the scene from Saving Private Ryan. And so I remember feeling around for my arm, probably for only like 5 or 10 seconds. And then I remember going, well, you got to get out of here, So, because again, the fight was really still going on. So I got up and I went to the back door, which had a porch light. And I remember looking down at my arm and seeing my arm. And from here, about right here to right, up in here, up near my shoulder, it was hamburger meat. It was just literally looked like hamburger meat. Looked like if you took a machete to a deer's leg, or I don't know. It was bad. And I looked at it and like, well, that's fucked. And I can honestly say, people won't believe this, but I can honestly say I didn't look at my right arm for a year. I didn't even look at it directly. Literally, I didn't look at it for a year. Maybe more. Might have been, no, it's probably about a year. And, no, actually not a year, maybe like 4 months. The whole time in the hospital, never looked at my arm, never once. And I really had to, I knew I had an arterial bleed. I knew I was bleeding out. I was very aware of that. And I don't remember how I got over the wall. Must have used ladders. I don't remember. I had a head injury. And so I remember coming out and seeing the wall, which all the houses had these little, walled in areas. And I just remember seeing the wall and going, well, that ain't happening. So I, turned my back against the wall and just slid down and tried to finagle with the tourniquet, which wasn't working. And then I had the realization that I was like, shit, I might bleed out and die because I just couldn't get the tourniquet to go. And then luckily I got saved by, one of my buddies came out and ended up putting the tourniquet on me and saved my life. And then I don't remember how they got me. From what I was told, the only time I lost consciousness was apparently when they moved me and went through the house and around the front. That's the only time I lost consciousness. And then I got evac'd by a little bird. They put me in the hellhole, and my medic literally laid on me because Little Bird is not a medical evac platform. So they just literally, he crushed my body and held on to me. And then I went to the Baghdad cache, was there for probably 12 hours. And then I flew to Balad and then to Germany, and then I was home. So, I mean, I went from, combat to, I think, the US. The one thing I'll say that people don't realize is when you watch it in the movies, the guy gets blown up or whatever, shot, whatever, and then it goes from there, and then the next thing you know, he's in the hospital, back at home, right? It took me a week of travel. I had to go from where I got hurt to the hospital in Baghdad. Then I had to take a helicopter from there to Balad. Then I had to take the medevac bird from Balad to Longstuhl. And then in Longstuhl, we had to get loaded from the plane onto a truck or a van and then taken to the hospital. And then, think of how bad international travel sucks.
When you're
now add in you're fucked up. Like, dude, it's a level of misery that is hard to explain, and it took me a week to get all the way back to the US. But and then the surgery process was a long, it's like a 4-year process of surgery, recovery, surgery, healing, rehab, then surgery, healing, rehab, surgery, healing, because they had to rebuild my arm from the inside out, one type of tissue at a time.
So am I right in understanding that initially you had the mindset that you were going to get yourself back on the team?
Oh yeah, I had that mindset for a while, probably a year and a half, maybe.
So we talked earlier about purpose, identity, tribe. You are in this, the absolute tip of the spear. You have this cohesive group. You have a purpose. You have a tribe. You're injured. You find yourself separated geographically and obviously, operationally as well. You're fighting to try and get back on this team. When is that realization that you're not going to be able to? And then talk to me about the impact on your mental health once you realize that was basically gone.
Yeah, it was a surgery I got where you're probably not going to be able to see it, but basically they cut my They cut my secondary tendons right here, and then they grafted them. So I open and close my hand from these tendons. My extensor tendons that would normally open your hand are gone. So they had to reroute. So I open and close my hand using the same tendons. And I had to rewire my brain to figure out how to do that. It's hard to explain. But it was after that surgery that I was like, just reality hit me. Reality fucking punched me in the face and was like, dude, that ain't happening. But here's the thing, knowing what I know now, at that time, they said that I had I forget the number. It was like a 40% chance of going back to a team after 5 years. And at that time, it was, like late 2000s. I was like, dude, Afghanistan is done. It was like 2007. Afghanistan's done. Iraq is going to be done in a year or two, which was actually accurate. And then I'm like, then there's going to be nothing. And I can't sit here and watch everyone deploy for the next 4 to 5 years with a 40% chance of going back to a team. There's no way. I'll kill myself. So I made the choice to medically retire. I made the choice to pull the plug on myself because I just couldn't be there in that environment without doing the job that I did. And so, the crazy part now in hindsight is, could I have went back to a team? 100%. Yes. And dude, ISIS wasn't even a word back then. Afghanistan hadn't even kicked off. You know what I mean? Like, I could have gone back to a team and there was eons of work left, but I didn't know what I didn't know. So, and that was something I had to come to terms with, was that I pulled the plug on myself. And that was something mentally that was very hard for me.
We were touching on this at the beginning as far as, expecting the VA or other organizations to take care of you, and then really trying to forge your own path and learn. What was the darkest place that you found yourself? And then what were the tools that you started accumulating to get yourself out of that dark place?
So I'm going to change what you said. You said the dark place. I'm going to change that to dark places. What I've learned is that the concept of a rock bottom is the inverse. The concept of a rock bottom is the inverse of a false peak. There's a lot of false bottoms. So many times I thought I'd hit rock bottom, but it wasn't rock bottom. So there would be a time in 2009 that I would have, had severe issues. It was when I really had realized, that I was never going to be the same, and I was struggling with all these different things. And then there would be another time, in 2022 that I, had, some severe issues with the things that were going on in my personal life. And then, there was something recently, which was, I just figured out in the last, 6 months that I had TBI. I didn't know for 20 years that I had severe TBI. I mean, that was the monkey on my back for 2 decades that I didn't even know was there. And all the shit that I was doing to help myself and all this stuff, I was polishing the brass on the Titanic. It was all going down. It was it was sinking, and I just didn't know, because I didn't know that what the iceberg was. And now I know. And now I just finished a treatment for it, and now I feel 1,000 times better. But dude, I didn't know what the actual problem was for 20 years. And that was and right now, the hard part for me is accepting that, fuck, man, where would I be today if I would have, dealt with that 20 years ago, But you can't think about that, but it's hard not to,
What was the treatment that you used to help with the TBI?
I've done 2. I've done one called Neurova Labs, which is a great company that makes I was about to say they make a virtual headset. They do not make a virtual headset. They make a virtual TBI software program, for lack of a better term, that you use through Meta goggles, and you basically treat TBI through virtual reality. So I use that. It's awesome. I highly recommend that. And then I also just did the Family Treatment Center that does the TMS, which is transcranial magnetic stimulation. And that was amazing. And I just finished that. That was really good. Personally, I'm going to say I think both of them are good, because one, I had to go do, in person in Texas. I went to the clinic in Texas. The other one was done in at home. So it's like, I think it's great to have something that you can do at home. You know what I mean? And you have control over. It's most of us live very busy lives, and you're not going to get away with I'm going to take off work for a week or 2 weeks and go do this treatment, whatever. It doesn't work that way. And so I think the genius of the Neurova Labs is doing it through virtual reality.
the ETMS, which is EEG guided TMS, is actually available for firefighter or first responders in Florida. They've got a massive grant to get
Nice.
people in there.
Yeah.
I haven't done it myself yet, but
I mean,
it's something
I
that I've
can
heard a
tell
lot
you,
of
dude,
people.
I can tell you right now, the TMS I did was amazing. I I didn't really have much hope for it, to be honest with you, but now having done it, I think it's pretty. I think it's been great.
That's so good to hear. Well, we could talk about 1,000 other things, but I need to be very
We
mindful of
could,
your
yeah,
time.
yeah. Well, no,
So
it was
before I
great
let
talking
you
to you,
go,
and we'll do part two one day.
absolutely. Well, just before I let you go, let's talk about Forged in Chaos. So you've written a biography. Tell people kind of what made you write the book, and then what they'll find between the covers.
Yeah, the book really just came down to it was two things. One, I was at a rehab in 2022 called Warrior's Heart, and while I was there, which is a great rehab, in fact, it's ran by my former, I guess he's a team, well, not my team, but former unit member Tom Spooner, who's like a legendary dude. He started Warrior's Heart with a couple other partners, and it is the number one veteran and first responder rehab facility in the nation. So they take firefighters, they take law enforcement, they take EMS, and they take military and veterans. I was there, and while I was there, and we already talked about this, but while I was there, I'm I don't know, 100 people cycle out while you're there. I don't know the number, and I just started noticing like all these people are freaking have the same fundamental basic childhood as me. And I'm like, that cannot be a coincidence. You know what I mean? Like it's like a just slightly varying story on the same fundamental childhood. So I was like, that's important. You know what I mean? Like that's important. We need to talk about this. And so then what happened was that was when I was kind of like, all right, I think there's something to the childhood component. Then I did the Sean Ryan show, and I got, a million messages of people saying, dude, you telling your story was like me telling mine. And when I heard that, and I heard it from so many people, that was when I went, okay, I need to write a book because it's obvious that my story isn't my story. My story is our story. And so that's why I wrote the book. So what the book really is I call myself patient zero in it. And it's really me using myself as the patient zero to really talk about us collectively as a community.
And where can people find the book?
It's on Amazon. So Forged in Chaos by Tyler Gray. There's obviously a book, and then there's the audiobook that is available on Audible, which I did the narration myself. I didn't want to do it. I got talked into it. Now I'm glad I did it because I kind of used my acting skills and kind of made it a little performance-y in it, which is, it's not a reading. It's kind of me, if there's an argument with me and my ex, then I gave it how it sounded, so it's pretty, I've been told, people like the audio book a lot better, I think, than the book, just because I kind of put that, you feel like you're there. So I'm very proud of it now, but yeah, Amazon, and you're not going to read about it. It tells my story, but like I said, my intent with the book is not for people to read it and see me, but to read it and see themselves.
One quick question. I wrote a couple of books. First one was a nonfiction. Second one was a air quotes fiction based a lot on real life.
Yeah.
I found writing very cathartic, but when I read the audiobooks, I narrated both of mine as well, it almost had the opposite effect temporarily because you're really having to relive it. And as you said, especially when you're, allowing that motion to be in your voice. What was your experience?
The exact same. I had to stop reading the book probably 30 times because things hit me that had never hit me before because my theory is because it's like you're reading someone else's story, but it's not someone else's story. It's your story, but it feels like it's someone else's story. So it's like when I'm reading about myself as a kid, yeah, I know what the fuck happens. It's my life, but it still feels like I'm reading about another kid. So then that allowed me, that the detachment allowed me to feel for that kid like it was someone other than myself. And dude, there's at least 20 times when I was reading the book that I just stopped and would, the sound engineers in there and like, sorry. And I did not, when it first happened, man, I was so shocked. I remember getting, so here's what happened. And I remember the line, it'll make me emotional now. Just think about it. But I remember reading, and obviously I know the story and, I know what the book is. So I know what the lines are, not, exactly, but you know what's coming. And I remember reading it, and then it hit me to the point where I now know what's coming. I know the lines that are coming. And man, as soon as that I said that sentence and then I knew where it led, I just felt this immediate rush of emotion. And I was like, oh, fuck, I'm not going to be able to say this. But then I was like, no, I can get through it. And this is all going in my mind while I'm reading it out loud. And man, I said, there was like 2 more sentences until that other sentence. And I did the one, and just the emotional spike was just so dramatic as I got to that line. And when I got to the line, dude, I was done. I just stopped, and I literally choked on my words. And I'm like, and I probably had to sit there for, I don't know, 2 minutes before I could actually do it. And that happened about 20 times reading the book. Did not see that coming at all. Just like you said, like I did, if you would have told me, I would have like laughed and been like, yeah, whatever. I don't care about that shit. But yeah, it was a interesting, didn't give a single fuck when writing it, with my co-author, 0 fucks, but reading it by myself in the booth. Yeah, and that's the other thing is I read the book a million times, every edit, like I read it, but something about reading it out loud, it just hit different. I don't know. I mean, same thing for you. I think it's universal. Yep. I can say this, and you're going to probably agree with me. I can say that reading the audiobook is one of the weirdest things I've ever done in my entire life.
100%.
No, I shouldn't say it that way. One of the weirdest experiences I've ever had is actually a better way to put it. You know what I'm saying? It's unexplainable, but it's like if you tried to explain it to someone, you're reading the story of your life as if it's not your story, and you're acting out all the roles as if it's a story that you weren't a part of, but you were, and it affected you. And it was so crazy, man. I filmed it. I should have released the footage because I filmed myself recording it. So you can see when I'm like, oh. The line in particular, I won't say it, but there's a line in particular that just, even thinking about it now, fuck, like, I mean, it messed me up. And it just goes to show you how, actually, I want to say this, I'm going to end with this, but this is an important thing to say. I can go on stage and I can tell my story. I could tell it right now about the worst day of my entire life. And I could tell it with the emotion that I'm talking about right now. It's a story in a book that happened at Christian camp. So I won't tell it, I'll leave it for the book. But I could tell it right now, and I would tell it exactly as I'm talking right now. 0 emotion. And I've had people many times, just like on Sean Ryan, I'm telling my story and there's 0 emotion in any of it. I'm telling of it like, like I'm talking about someone else. And what I realized, I've had so many people be like, man, you seem like you're really good. You're, all that trauma, like that story is really fucking crazy story. And man, like, it's good on you that you've gotten past it or whatever. And the thing I want to make very clear is that, and I think this is common for our entire communities, and that is, I'm not over it. I'm not good. Me being able to talk about those things is because I still haven't allowed myself to feel them. because I shut off emotion for so long and I've never turned it back on. And I'm trying hard, but it's a long process and it doesn't happen overnight. So I don't want people to see me talking about a very tragic, traumatic story like the night I got blown up. If I can tell you that, like I'm talking about ordering a cheeseburger. It's not that I'm over that. It's not that I don't care. It's that I just still haven't connected any emotion to it. And that's not something to be revered. That's not something to look up to. That's not something that makes me cool. It's something that makes me weak. And if I was strong, I'd be able to tell that story and have the emotion choke me up and have it barely be able to come out and maybe not be able to tell that story publicly. That would be me being strong. So me right now, I'm working on it. I'm still not there that I can allow the emotion to come up because it's still somewhat shut down. And the lesson of reading the audiobook was when I learned that.
What a beautiful kind of full circle to our conversation at the beginning about little boys locking things in boxes and shoving them away.
Compartmentalization is what allows you to do the job. And the problem is now we've got this closet full of boxes, full of compartments, and you don't want to open them up. But the only way, so I have a saying, emotions will be present in the body until felt and felt adequately. Adequately. That's the key word. Not just felt adequately. I want to say one thing before we go. The most important modality that I've done, as far as trauma, not TBI, trauma, is craniosacral therapy. If you have tried talk therapy, if you've tried all the stuff and something's just not working, look up craniosacral, find a craniosacral person in your area. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's some straight hippie shit. It is. I don't care. I'm telling you it works. Science generally is lagging in their understanding of why things work. We generally figure out something works and science like, well, we don't exactly know why it works yet, but it does kind of work, but we don't know why. Craniosacral works, and craniosacral runs off the principle of the body keeps score, that your memories are stored somewhere physically in your body, and it works on releasing them and allowing you to feel them, to let them go. I can tell you it works. So if you've tried everything trauma-wise, try craniosacral. Find a legitimate practitioner in your area and give it a shot. It's worked for me. On that note, let me say one last thing, self-promotion. I have a YouTube series called Patient Zero on my YouTube. And I talk about all these different modalities. And it's me trying them. So like, I'll talk about me trying it, what it is, how it worked for me, what the process is, how I, and then what the results are, what are the results right after, what are the results after 3 weeks, 6 months, a year, whatever. Patient Zero is, and I refer to myself in Fortune and Chaos as Patient Zero, is me basically showcasing different modalities. Because
Beautiful.
it's like, there's all these things out there. There's all these people that want to help, but I personally haven't found a centralized, the people that do Ibogaine say Ibogaine's the best thing for everyone. The people that do craniosacral say craniosacral's the thing for everyone. The reality is everyone is different, and these are all different modalities. And I am trying to create a centralized place where all the different modalities live, and you can just see the different ones. And I'll tell you what worked for me. It doesn't mean it's going to work for you, but it's one place where you can see them all talked about and hopefully get a fundamental understanding of what they are, what they do, what they can do, and what they did for me.
I love that concept. I think one of the things that I hope is the next conversation in the whole mental health thing is, again, the post-traumatic growth, the resilient firefighter, police officer, soldier, etc. But what we need is hope. And I don't think that most people realize how diverse the toolbox is. You go to the VA, you have a shitty counselor, now you prescribe psych meds, and then you're this is bullshit, it's not working, and then you end it. You don't realize there's equine therapy and Ibogaine and MDMA and, some of the modalities, TMS and all these different areas. And everyone's recipe is going to be different, everyone's unique
Yeah.
journey. And then you
Yeah.
did this,
Yeah.
and now, okay, now my counseling is working because I've opened these boxes. So I think it's a really exciting conversation, especially when it's coming from someone like you. And I say that because a lot of men, still lean into that. Oh, it's weakness. Don't be a pussy. It's like, okay, well, you're saying that you're tougher than a Delta operator. Is that what I'm getting from you, Steve the plumber? So just, calm your tits and listen to these incredible warriors that are out there having the humility to be courageous about, with their vulnerability, and also say, look, I've been through all this stuff and I found these things and they are working. And that means that you can find your own version of it too.
I mean, I'm glad you said that, because you asked me a question and I left that part out of your question. Your question was why I wrote the book. And I mean, I gave mostly the answer, but another piece of the answer was, as a, guy in a former cool guy unit that people think is, T-1000 robots, I wanted to basically write about vulnerability. I mean, Forged in Chaos is about self-doubt. That's what the book's about. And I wanted to write it so that people, exactly what you said, that looked at someone that came from an organization where people think is unfeeling and robotic and go, well, wait a minute, if this guy is talking about the struggles that he has, then maybe it's okay to do that. And maybe it's okay that I can talk about my story. That's why I wrote it. And that's why I put my unit history in the book, is because it's relevant to that. I can't tell that message without saying, hey, I was here, we're known for being this, but I'm telling you, we're not that. You think we are, only because that's your image. That's what you think it is, but that's not what it really is. Tom Spooner's like the most spiritual dude ever, right? He's like the definition of a stoic warrior. But on that note, if there's anything that I definitively know at this point in my life, it's this: whoever projects strength is weak, and whoever shows weakness is strong. As soon as somebody comes up to me and starts talking about how badass they are, I immediately tune out. If somebody comes up to me and starts talking about their struggle, what have they struggled with, or what are they bad at, dude, I lean in. I'm all ears, because all of us have struggled, and all of us can connect with struggle. We connect through struggle. We disconnect through strength and not strength. We disconnect through hearing how great everyone is. No one gives a shit. You tell me you've struggled. It's like, I call it Eminem syndrome. Why is Eminem one of my favorite musicians? Because he talks about how much he sucks. Right? Like every damn, but it's how much he sucks, but that he's overcome it, or is trying to overcome it. But every song is essentially, I'm half a piece of shit to myself, and I'm half an unstoppable superhero. The tagline on my book is, what do you do when the things that made you a superhero in the eyes of the world made you the supervillain in your own life? That's really what the book's about.
Love it. It's funny. One of my Delta friends said once, if you want to see imposter syndrome, go stand in the team room. And I thought that's a mic drop. The people that we think are the tip of the spear, that have their shit together, are dealing with the same imposter syndrome that everyone else is.
That is a great saying. Who said it? Do you mind saying?
I'll tell you after I hit stop, because he's
okay. Yeah. That is a great saying. Holy shit! Wow, that's a great one. I'm gonna remember that one.
Well, Tyler, I want to be mindful of your time. I know we've gone over a little bit, but it's been such an amazing conversation. We haven't even touched Hollywood, so we'll definitely have to do a part two.
We'll do a part two. All good. Yeah, all good. Yeah. If you don't mind, I'll plug. I did the book, but also I'm in 2 days. The company I created, Saberdyne Systems. So saberdynesystems.com will go live. I've got a product for the firearms industry that is going to change the game. I promise you. Check it out. And then, the YouTube basically I'm going to be doing all my tactical, patient zero as well as tactical content will be on the Saberdyne Systems YouTube. So look out for that if you're interested in seeing more of me. Oh, and Instagram, Tyler A. Gray, Gray spelled with an E. Thanks so much for having me, James.